Ed, you're bang on time. This isn't very rock star of you.
Oh, it's extremely rock star of me. Always on time.
Punctuality is the new rock and roll.
It is indeed.
Whereabouts are you at the moment, my friend?
I'm in Brisbane.
Ah, me too, me too. Nice.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I can't even trick you about the weather or anything then.
Well, normally my thing when I interview Americans, particularly those in California, because obviously we're a day ahead. Like
Mm,
during 2020 when we started, and obviously the world was just in upheaval, I would open interviews by saying, "I'm actually calling you from the future."
future.
Spoiler alert, it's still shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Mate, I have been doing a lot of reading about Brisbane music history and stuff because as you may have noticed, I'm a bit of a young pup by the Saints standards.
Mm,
I was born in '85, so the '70s music scene is something that, I the bands that I grew up listening to were influenced by you, you know.
mm.
So it's been very interesting. Like we recently lost the zoo, after 31 years, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what experience did you have with that over the years?
Oh, I played there quite a few times. I saw a few bands there.
Hmm.
I thought it was a great venue. I mean, it had some design problems, but that was part of its charm, I think.
Yeah, I'm hearing people saying the lack of air conditioning really came to a head during summer tours.
Yeah, I remember it just being open windows and fans.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. It's old school,
yeah. They'll live. They'll live. It's interesting, isn't it? Because see, it's been people are mourning it. It's been a, around for over 30 years. But it got me thinking. I'm seeing gig posters from when I was growing up in the 90s, and almost none of the venues are still around. So as sad as it is, venues don't really have that long a lifespan, do they?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. How would you describe the musical landscape when Brisbane was coming up? Because when the Saints was starting, because I understand there weren't that many venues to play live music.
Uh, you had like a few sort of nightclubs in town and in the valley, um, and you had Festival Hall,
Mhm.
and that was kind of it. Apart from which is what we utilized, we hired halls, like it was probably easier to do in those days than it would be now. Um, just suburban halls, some of which still stand, and would put on our own shows because we were sort of. I mean, there was an agency, there were maybe two agencies, but we were not what they wanted, and they weren't offering what we wanted, sort of thing.
In reading about Brisbane in the '70s, funnily enough, Yori Peterson's name comes up a lot. He seems to be a guy with a pretty wild legacy. How did you guys view him as young people in Brisbane in the '70s?
Sort of a mixture of contempt, derision. He was a buffoon, a crook, um, but a lot of not a lot, but enough people liked him to keep him in power, sort of thing. Not everybody liked him, so he got worse after we left. The '80s were probably the worst times of that era, but I wasn't here then, sort of thing. So yeah, yeah. I mean, we weren't fixated on Bjelke Petersen or anything. Like it was just sort of a, I don't know. You have to sort of watch the videos of him doing press conferences and stuff, to kind of get an idea of what he was like and what a normal young person, how a normal young person would respond to that.
I remember seeing, hearing people talking about he was doing an interview talking about something to do with corruption, and in the background you could see illegal pokie machines being installed.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of, you know, sort of payoffs and that sort of stuff going on. They kind of superficially ran this very moral sort of Christian, clean sort of society, but there's a lot of stuff going on under, not that far under the surface actually, and cops would be paid off, politicians paid off, that sort of thing.
The Saints influenced a lot of the Australian bands that I grew up listening to, like Regurgitator and Scream Theater, all these great 90s bands. How did you see the Saints' influence spreading after your tenure in the band?
I sort of noticed it. I didn't spend a lot of time fixating on it, if you know what I mean, and it wasn't like I was sort of being showered with rose petals or anything when I was walking down the street, so I wasn't that aware of
it. Well, and that's a terrible miscarriage of justice, Ed.
I could think of worse things, but yeah, sure.
I won't name exactly who, but I was trying to get some well-known 90s musicians to interview you, and they were all too, and the common theme was they were too nervous because I'm guessing, they held the Saints, in such high regard. And
right.
Yeah, well, there you go. So maybe they have some rose petals.
Well, yeah.
It got me thinking, like, who would that have been for you growing up? Who would the 25-year-old Ed Kuepper have been too nervous to talk to?
Practically everyone that I liked, I mean, by the time I was 25, I was reasonably experienced. The Saints, we were quite young when we got started. I do remember being in a pizza restaurant in London with my girlfriend and Chris Bailey and his girlfriend, and we were sitting on the table next to Ray Davies of the Kinks, and all these people were coming up to him all the time, and we were sitting right next to him, and just didn't. I wasn't so much being sort of nervous, just not wanting to sort of make a fool of yourself, not a fool of yourself, but kind of, impose upon this person who obviously will never go out in a public pizza restaurant again, kind of thing, I mean, I don't know. I'm not that much in awe of people. I mean, there are musicians that I absolutely love and have the highest respect for and sort of wish that I was that good, sort of thing. But most of the time, it's just I really wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah.
If you're talking to a guitarist or something, you say, "Oh, been playing any good chords recently?" Or I don't know what to talk about, kind of thing.
This is where it really pays to become a third-rate music journalist, because then you can get hooked up with interviews and you can think of what to say ahead of time, so you're not running up into them in public and going, I don't love your stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. When I was a teenager, I got a few autographs. Like I made a point whenever I saw somebody. I mean, most people you couldn't get backstage to, but I got a couple of autographs, that sort of thing. As a kid, I had no hesitation in doing that sort of thing. But these days, yeah, I mean, it takes a while to get to know. I'm not good at small talk.
Me neither.
So
In this, I can do this all day.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you and I were just sitting in a room together, I would be
yeah. What do
paralyzing.
you say? What do you
Yeah.
say? Yeah.
So Matt, what were the genesis of these shows? Like, how did this new filmed lineup come together?
Well, I wanted to do something in conjunction with with this release of this box set coming up. The fact that the box set has taken about 4 years or something to actually get it into production uh, meant that we just sort of had to wait until it came out, sort of thing. And so the intention was there, and then it was a matter of working out who was going to be involved in it, who could be involved in it, and that's how the band came together.
Did you, how did you go about sourcing who would be interested in playing? Or did they, yeah,
Oh, I mean, I work with people all the time, sort of thing. So you put the word out, that sort of thing, and or you sort of know pretty much who you want to have in it, sort of thing. And in all cases, I ask them, kind of thing. No one asks me,
yeah.
sadly.
Were you at all surprised from the pushback from Chris Bailey's estate?
Uh, what I was surprised by was that I couldn't understand what they were actually talking about.
Hmm.
I mean, I read the press release. I don't see what their objections are. I thought the press release was a bit embarrassing for them, a bit incoherent, and I might be incoherent, but not if I'm going to write something down. Uh, yeah, I don't understand what the issue is.
Well, particularly since, from what I understand, you've used this, the Saints with the 70s edition after it
Hmm.
for quite some time.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very clear what the band is.
yeah,
We without putting like a few pages of history. People have to buy the box set to read all that, but it's yeah, no, it's pretty clear to me. I don't get what the issue is.
what can you
I
tell
mean,
me?
I know that one of the people involved is releasing a posthumous Chris Bailey album. Um, Maybe, but Chris was on board for the box set. You know, um, it's I don't get it. I
Yeah.
don't get it.
Um, what, so you're saying, so Chris was all right with this before, prior to his passing?
We hadn't talked. We talked about maybe doing some shows, but Chris and I doing shows has always been problematic without going into like you know chapter and verse on this stuff. Some of it is well known, and anyway, I don't really want to dwell on that. The my manager Tim Pittman got in touch with all of the members of the Saints in the surviving. Well, actually, before even Algie died, to basically um, do something to kind of revive, but also to repair the sort of historic poor royalty rates and stuff on this stuff. This is why it took so long to put out. We couldn't just release this material because we don't own it. And it was the first time that anyone had actually managed to get Chris on board with an action sort of against the record company to basically, adjust the royalty rates to something resembling, uh, a reasonable royalty rate as opposed to what we signed away 45 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever it was now. So Chris was very much on board. with that, then COVID came in, and I kept in touch with him. We spoke on the phone quite a bit during the COVID era. Um, but then with COVID, you had no idea, so that we made no plans. But yeah, I brought it up, but I've brought it up before. There's been a few discussions about doing things either as a duo or as the Saints, or
Yeah.
um, yeah.
What can you tell me about the box set itself? What kind of things have you worked on to include in it?
Um, well, there's the remastered for the first time in like 4 decades, I think, for vinyl. The first album in its original released form. Um, and it sounds really good. The new mastering sounds better than any other copy that I've heard, including the original ones. There's also a second disc, which is the first album, but in different mixes, with the exception of the single No Time and Stranded. They are the same mixes on both, but the other 9 tracks are different mixes, um, more stereo, maybe a little more conventional than what we actually released. So it's sort of interesting historically for people that, have a favorite record and want to hear the working process sort of thing. That album is a nice sort of supplement to that. There's a live at Hope and Anchor in London for the first time on vinyl. Officially, there is a bootleg of it going around, but it doesn't sound all that great. Then there's a fourth disc of singles and B-sides, that sort of stuff that weren't on the albums. And also one side of Live at Paddington Town Hall in early 1977 for the first time on vinyl. So it's a fairly it's most of what we sort of recorded in that 15-month period sort of thing. There's also a book with it, which it's a sort of presented as a sort of photo essay, um, just lots of photographs, memorabilia, and that sort of stuff in chronological order, or as close as I could get it.
Honestly, mate, your guitar playing from that period of the Saints is quite fondly remembered.
Mm.
And you've said in the past that people like to say that you're a punk band, and you're like, well, we predated punk.
Mm.
What kind of influences shaped how you played guitar in those early days?
Combination of a number of, like, I got into music from a really young age, and so I was listening, from before I went to school. But in the early '60s, I think I was about 8 years old or something, and I heard the Beatles, and that kind of turned my head. And then there was just this sort of flood of really great pop music. So that like I was hearing the guitars and all that sort of stuff. Then a little bit later, I sort of became a really big fan of the Black Sabbath. I really like Tony Iommi's guitar playing. The Who. Then I sort of heard the Stooges' Funhouse album, and so Ron Asheton was a big influence. I got to hear Lou Reed and Sterling Morrison. They kind of influenced me. The MC5, but also a lot of '50s stuff, sort of stuff from earlier that I didn't hear when I was a kid, kind of thing, that I got to hear as a teenager. So Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry, those sort of get a lot of blues, electric blues players like Elmer James, Jimmy Reed, all that sort of stuff. That it was sort of everything, really. You know,
Yeah.
there wasn't sort of like, I don't know, to separate it. It seems not right. You know, so it's a big sort of melding of a whole bunch of stuff. But ultimately, I think it can all be, if you had to put it down to like one ultimate guitar player, it's probably Bo Diddley.
Nice. I like
You
it.
know,
Yeah.
it's just that rhythm. It's that, and the overtones that he gets. You know, it's sort of, you know, and that is also then evident in a lot of the guitarists that came after him that I really liked and probably heard before I heard Bo Diddley, sort of thing. But that was, yeah, I think Bo is probably the king.
I like it. Ed, this has been great. Thank you very much for your time. And
Yeah, pleasure.
yeah, I'll hopefully be catching you at the Princess Theatre. So I'll see you then.
Excellent. Okay, see you then. Bye bye.